Hey there. Tonight, we're not chasing legends or looking for lost cities. We're going back to something quieter, something harder. We're going back to early America, not the one in textbooks or paintings, but the one with splinters in its hands and dirt under its fingernails. This is the version built by people who didn't leave behind memoirs or marble statues. Just worn-out tools, unmarked graves, and a legacy of survival carved into frostbitten mornings and back-breaking work. No fame, no fortune. Just long days, short lives, and a daily battle against the world itself. If this kind of slow, grounded history helps you unwind, feel free to like the video and subscribe. But only if it actually helps you rest. And in the comments, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing who else is drifting off to the past at the same quiet hour. So, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Wrap up in something warm. And let's begin with the kind of life you didn't read about in school. You were told it would be hard, yes, but hard in the way a long hike is hard. A little discomfort, some bad food, a few cold nights. What no one told you was that it would break you, slowly, thoroughly, and with the dull persistence of seawater grinding down a stone. Because the Atlantic crossing isn't an adventure, it's an ordeal. And by the end of it, you'll be unrecognisable if you're even still alive. Your first mistake was stepping aboard the ship. From the outside, it looked majestic. Tall sails, a carved figurehead, the faint flutter of a flag promising new beginnings. But inside, it's a different story. Below deck, where you and most of the other poor souls are packed in, the air is thick with sweat, rot, and a tension you can feel in your teeth. The ceiling is too low to stand. The floor is sticky with old spills, and the wooden walls groan like they're already regretting the voyage. You're assigned a space that's roughly the size of a grave. You sleep there, wedged between strangers, your possessions tucked beneath your aching back. There's no pillow, no mattress, just straw that smells like mould and something worse. Above you, the ship creaks with every wave, the boards swelling and shrinking, always on the verge of splitting apart. Around you, people shift in their sleep, cough, cry, mumble prayers. The first night, someone vomits. The second night, someone dies. You don't sleep. Not really. The air below deck is so foul that even rats have started making excuses to visit the upper levels. And there are plenty of rats. Bold, confident ones. They don't scurry, they stroll. One of them stares at you while you eat your biscuit, a rock-hard slab of flour, salt and boredom. And you're not sure who's in charge anymore. Every day begins with a shouted command and a few hours of pointless waiting. You climb to the deck, when permitted, blinking against the light like a mole dragged out of its burrow. The sun is blinding, the wind is sharp, but at least it smells less like feet. You breathe deep, trying to remember what fresh air feels like. Then someone sneezes in your direction, and the moment is over. Meals are not meals. They are events of survival. Salted pork so tough it could be used as ship armour. Dried peas that roll off your spoon like they're trying to escape. Ship's biscuit that might crack your tooth before it cracks in your mouth. If you're lucky, you can dunk it in water or beer to soften it. If you're unlucky, there's a bug in the beer. You drink it anyway. Everyone does. Drinking water is another insult. Stored in wooden barrels, it quickly becomes greenish and sour. Some try to flavour it with vinegar or citrus if they brought any. Most didn't. A few brave souls drink from rainwater caught in buckets, praying that it's cleaner than what's in the cask. Spoiler, it's not. And then the storms come. The ship tosses like a toy, pitching and rolling so violently that your stomach decides it's safer to evacuate. You cling to ropes, to walls, to people, anything that isn't moving too much. You vomit. So does everyone else. The deck is a slick of rain, bile, and panic. Below, the sick groan and the healthy wish they were sick enough to lie down. A barrel breaks loose and smashes someone's leg. There's no doctor. There's only a man with a saw and a bottle of rum. Some get better. Some get worse. Fever spreads like gossip. One by one, people develop rashes, chills, coughing fits that never end. The surgeon, really just the cook with fewer fingers, recommends bleeding, mustard plasters, or thinking positive. He pulls teeth with pliers, lances abscesses with knives, and occasionally performs a prayer while doing it. Whether the prayer is for healing or forgiveness is unclear. The dead are buried at sea, wrapped in cloth, tied to a stone, slid over the edge. There's a ceremony, but it's short. Always short. No one wants to linger on death when they're still bargaining with life. You watch as a friend you barely knew disappears into the water with a soft splash, and the next morning someone else takes their spot. The straw doesn't even have time to forget. Days blend. The sea is endless. A constant expanse of grey-blue nothingness that shifts only slightly from morning to night. You lose count. You lose interest. Conversations grow shorter. Humour dies. Your skin turns pale, then burns. Your lips crack. Your joints ache. You've developed a limp. You're not sure how or when. It's just there now. Part of the new you. At night, the dreams are worse than the days. You dream of falling, of drowning, of arriving only to be turned back. You dream of food, but it's always just out of reach. You dream of your family, but they're strangers now. Your own reflection startles you. Gaunt cheeks, hollow eyes, a beard you don't remember growing. You're shrinking inward, vanishing. You don't know what time it is anymore. The sun rises and falls, but it might as well be some distant theatre production performed for other people. Time on board is measured in hunger and headaches, in coughs that linger too long, and in how many rats you've named before they mysteriously disappear. The ship becomes a kind of hellish town, complete with social politics. There's the snorer, the weeper, the woman who tells stories from her village every night until someone finally asks her to stop. And of course there's you, the one who just keeps staring at the wall. On calmer days, the captain makes you swab the deck. Why? Who knows? Possibly just to remind you that you're alive. You mop with a ragged cloth that used to be someone's shirt, pushing fish guts and old blood toward the edge of the ship, while a sailor shouts at you to put your back into it. You have. Your back is all you've got left. Your soul already jumped overboard. There's little to do, but imagine what's waiting for you. You've heard stories. Some say there's gold in the rivers, others that the trees grow food. More grounded folk speak of open land and religious freedom. But none of that matters if you don't survive the next biscuit. Your jaw clicks when you chew. Your gums bleed. You've stopped noticing. Children on board don't cry anymore. They sit in corners with wide, distant eyes, occasionally licking the condensation off barrels. They're learning early. Hope is a thing best left on shore. And yet, somewhere between day 30 and day who even knows, Your body adapts. Your stomach stops rejecting the motion. Your brain accepts the horror as normal. You stop fighting the smell. One evening, you're allowed on deck as the sun sets. It's beautiful. A riot of oranges and purples over the endless sea. For a moment, you remember why you came. Then someone nearby coughs up blood and the spell is broken. You go back below. The night before landfall, you hear a song. Someone singing an old folk tune, soft and cracked. Others join in. It's not joyful exactly. More like a ritual. A lullaby for the part of yourselves that's about to die so another part can begin. The part that will try to farm a swamp with one shovel and half a recipe for bread. And when you finally do reach shore, and the boat grinds onto the rocky beach, you feel nothing but exhaustion. The land is wet, cold, utterly silent. You kneel, not to pray, but because your knees give out. You're not the hero of this story. You're just the survivor of the prologue. You glance back at the ship. It's already turning, already leaving. No rescue. No returns. You're here now. And you wouldn't last a day. You've arrived. You're standing on the edge of the new world, boots squelching in unfamiliar mud, wind gnawing at your cheeks, and a quiet, creeping dread settling into your chest. It should feel like a triumph. Instead, it feels like a mistake that hasn't fully introduced itself yet. You've survived the voyage. Congratulations. Now the land gets its turn. Let's get one thing clear. Early America is not waiting for you with open arms. It's not offering a feast, a warm bed, or a sign that says, "Glad you made it." It's cold, damp, and strangely silent. There are trees everywhere, tall, dark, and close together, as if conspiring. You try to smile, to convince yourself this is the beginning of something noble, but the wind steals that smile before it forms. Welcome to a continent that neither asked for you nor particularly cares you exist. There's no settlement, not really. Maybe a few wooden huts hacked together by the advance party, roofs that leak more than they shelter. The ground is uneven and covered in brush. Everything smells of wet leaves, smoke, and something faintly rotten. You're told to help build. You don't know how to build. You pick up a log and follow instructions barked by someone whose only qualification seems to be louder than everyone else. The work is immediate. There's no orientation, no unpacking of bags, no polite easing into colonial life. You start chopping, stacking, hauling. You are, very suddenly, a labourer. And the land does not cooperate. The trees here are different, harder. The roots go deep. Your axe bounces off the trunk with a dull thud, and your hands blister after an hour. You pause to breathe, and someone yells that there's no time to rest. Winter's coming. Of course it is. You've never truly known cold. The cold here is wet, bone deep. It gets into your clothes, your shoes, your lungs. Your breath fogs in front of you and vanishes like every hope you had on the boat. There's no insulation in your new home, just planks. Gaps between them so wide you can see daylight even when you're indoors. You try to build a fire, but the wood is damp, the wind is relentless, and your fingers are stiff. The smoke doesn't rise. It curls around your head like a disappointed ghost. Nights are worse. You huddle in a corner of a half-finished shelter, your cloak wrapped around you, listening to the wind punch through the cracks. Someone coughs all night. Someone else mutters prayers in a language you don't know. You can't sleep. Your straw bed is wet. Your back aches. You keep one eye open for rats and the other on the ceiling in case it collapses. Morning comes with no ceremony, just the same grim routine. Build, haul, dig, carry. You're sent to gather water. The nearest stream is a mile away, and the mud sucks at your boots with every step. The bucket's handle breaks. You patch it with twine. It leaks anyway. By the time you return, half of it's gone. No one thanks you. Someone complains it's too cold to drink. There's no food yet. Not really. You eat from stores brought on the ship. Salted meat that tastes like shoe leather, and crackers that crumble into sawdust. The communal pot simmers all day, mostly water and a turnip someone found growing wild. You take your ration in silence and try not to think about the second helping that won't come. Hunger becomes a constant background hum, like tinnitus for your stomach. The forest surrounds you, watching. It's too quiet. The birds here don't sing the way they did back home. You hear rustles, cracks, something moving in the underbrush. You don't ask what. You don't want to know. You're not afraid of the woods. You're afraid of what you don't understand about them. And there's a lot you don't understand. You try to farm. Or at least, someone says you should. The soil is rocky, the land uneven. Seeds vanish into the earth and never return. A few stunted sprouts emerge, then wilt in the wind. Someone suggests it's the wrong season. Someone else blames the devil. You just blame your hands, which haven't stopped bleeding since the second day. There are insects. So many insects. Big ones. Biting ones. Flying ones that seem to find your ears on purpose. Mosquitoes that come in swarms at dusk and leave welts the size of walnuts. You slap your neck so often you forget what your skin used to feel like. Then there are the ticks. Small, silent, and insidious. You pull one from your leg and stare at it for 10 minutes, wondering if you're about to die. You're told to be careful when wandering. Not just because of the terrain or the animals, but because of uncertainties. No one says what that means, just nods darkly and tightens their grip on a musket that looks like it's more likely to explode than fire straight. You sleep with a knife now. Not for defense, but because it gives you the illusion of control. Sanitation is theoretical. There are no toilets, just a designated patch of forest. You go with a stick and a prayer, hoping no one follows. It rains often. The mud never dries. Your boots are constantly wet. Your socks, if you still have socks, are stiff with filth. The smell becomes part of you. Every joint aches. You've stopped wiping your nose. Your nails are black. You've picked up a rash on your neck, and your lips bleed when you smile, which is rare. No one sings here. No one jokes. You work until you fall down, then get up and do it again. This land is not your enemy. It's worse. It's indifferent. It doesn't care how noble your mission was, how pious your intentions, or how optimistic your shipboard prayers. It simply exists, cold, wild, and full of things that do not need you. And slowly you realise you need it. And it does not care. The weather plays games with you. One day, it's so warm you sweat through your linen shift. The next, frost bites your toes while you sleep. There's no pattern, no warning, just extremes. Your roof leaks. Your firewood is damp. The smoke clings to everything. Your clothes, your skin, your lungs. You smell like a campfire that regrets its choices. Someone goes missing. No one talks about it. Maybe they wandered too far. Maybe they fell into a ravine. Maybe something found them. Their name is spoken less and less until it fades entirely, like the last echo of a bell you only imagined. Another person gives up, stops eating, sits by the stream and stares. They're still breathing, but you know they're gone. You're supposed to build a community, a colony, but everyone is too tired. You sleep in shifts. You eat in silence. The preacher offers a sermon and no one listens. You're too busy wondering if the flower has bugs in it, and too hungry to care if it does. Someone tries to steal from the storage crate. They're caught. There's no jail, so they're tied to a post in the rain. No one intervenes. You start to forget the sound of your own voice. You speak only when spoken to. The days blur together. Wake, work, suffer, sleep, repeat. Your muscles scream, but your mind stays quiet. That's how you survive. You stop thinking. You just do. At night, you dream of home. Not with longing, but confusion. The smells are wrong, the colours too bright, the bed's too soft. You wake up disoriented and angry. You remind yourself this is what you wanted. Freedom, opportunity, land. You got all three. You just weren't told what they cost. The cost is your comfort, your health, your illusions. You came here thinking the land needed taming. But the land doesn't care. The land has been here far longer than you. It watches, it waits, and it weathers you down. Not with sudden violence, but with slow, patient erosion. And this is just the first month. The real test comes with winter. Hunger is not a feeling here. It's a companion. A constant background presence that shadows you from dawn to dusk and sleeps beside you at night. It murmurs during prayer, grumbles through conversation, and screams during silence. In early America, food is not guaranteed. It is fought for, begged for, traded for, or simply imagined. Your first taste of New World cuisine comes with low expectations and an even lower caloric return. Breakfast doesn't exist as a formal concept. There's no morning meal laid out on a table. You eat when there is food, which is not often and not much. A bite of cornmeal mush, a crust of dry bread, maybe some boiled beans. You chew slowly not to savour it, but to fool your body into thinking it's getting more than it is. There is no menu, just whatever's left, whatever's survived the journey, or whatever hasn't yet rotted in the storehouse. Spoilage is inevitable. The ship's stores, salted pork, dried peas, flour, have been slowly decaying in the humid New World air. Mice chew through sacks. Weevils swarm. Barrels swell and crack. By the time you reach for something, it's already half gone and half mould. The staple of your diet is cornmeal. Not golden, fluffy cornbread, mind you. A gritty porridge made by boiling coarse ground maize in water, then adding a bit of salt, if there's any left. You eat it hot in the morning and cold in the evening, often with nothing else. It clings to the sides of your bowl like regret and goes down with the consistency of damp sand. You miss bread, real bread, the kind you knew back home. Here, bread is a rare, precious thing. Wheat does not grow easily in this climate. The soil is too rocky, the rainfall too wild, the tools too crude. If you manage to grow wheat, thresh it, grind it, and somehow keep it dry, then you might get to bake bread once. But that requires an oven, and ovens require bricks, and bricks require time, clay, and someone who knows how not to die halfway through construction. Most of what passes for bread is made from rye, barley, or corn, mixed with whatever can stretch the dough. Acorn meal, powdered roots, even sawdust. You knead it with cold hands. Bake it in a pan over open flame, and hope it doesn't come out black on the outside and raw in the middle. The crust is tough, the inside is dense, and the flavour lands somewhere between bark and ash. Yet bread, bad as it is a luxury. Some days there's nothing. You dig up turnips the size of your fist. You boil nettles. You chew pine bark. Hunger pushes you toward the edge of reason. You start staring too long at the chickens, even though they're meant for eggs. You wonder what a squirrel might taste like. You hear stories of settlers eating leather when things got bad, shoes boiled into soup. You laugh nervously. Then you start checking your boots, and spoilage is constant. Flour goes mouldy, meat turns green, butter sours into a vinegary sludge. Even salt can fail you, growing damp and clumping into lumps that refuse to dissolve. You scrape the bad bits off. You hold your breath and eat it anyway. Cooking is improvisation. Pots are iron, heavy, and limited. You cook over open flames, dodging smoke and flying embers. There's no timer, no recipe, just instinct and whatever didn't burn yesterday. You stir your stew with the same spoon you carved last week, the one that already has a crack running through the middle. The broth bubbles, steams, smells like nothing. You add herbs, wild onions, maybe a pinch of ash that fell in. You call it seasoning. And yes, there are days when things go well. A deer is caught. A fish is pulled from the stream. Someone stumbles across wild berries. But the deer must be shared, the fish divided, the berries picked before the birds get them. The moment is sweet, short, and gone. The next day, you're back to chewing boiled roots and wondering how many more meals your teeth can survive. Food isn't just scarce, it's dangerous. Undercooked meat brings worms. Spoiled milk brings vomiting. That root you thought was edible? It wasn't. A simple misstep in foraging leads to a night of agony and a quiet burial. You learn by doing, and often by dying. You ration everything. Every biscuit is counted. Every pinch of salt is a moral decision. You find yourself arguing over who gets the crust, who needs it more, who worked harder that day. You feel ashamed. Then you feel hungry again. Shame doesn't fill your stomach. Bread does. If you're lucky. There are no meals. Only moments where food intersects your path. Lunch doesn't arrive with a bell. It arrives if someone manages to find a squirrel, or digs up a few more turnips, or remembers there's a bit of bacon rind tucked in a cloth at the back of the hut. You eat fast, not because it's good, but because someone might try to take it. You chew with suspicion. Was that grit? Mould? A bug? Doesn't matter. It's food. You think about home, about bread that rose in ovens and smelled like comfort, about butter that didn't smell like cheese, about meat that wasn't a gamble. But you don't talk about it. No one does. Talking about home invites longing. Longing weakens the group. Instead you talk about who found a wild onion, who spotted a deer track, who didn't get sick after eating that weird root last week. Children get thinner. Their eyes sink. They stop complaining and start staring. You give them your portion sometimes, then regret it when your legs go weak in the afternoon. But you'd do it again. Because there's something worse than starving. It's watching someone else do it, slowly. And then comes the barter. Trade becomes currency. You offer buttons, cloth, tools, anything that isn't food, in exchange for a bite of bread. Someone gives up a comb for half a biscuit. Someone else offers their only pair of dry socks for a hunk of dried meat. You'd be surprised what food is worth when it's the only thing standing between you and the grave. Famine doesn't come all at once. It seeps in. A day without meat, then 2. Then a week. Then the cornmeal runs low. The communal pot gets thinner. The portions shrink. The conversations stop. Everyone starts chewing slower. You go to bed earlier, not because you're tired, but because unconsciousness is the only escape from hunger that doesn't require payment. And with famine comes fear. People whisper about the last settlement, the one that vanished. No signs of a raid, just gone. Some say they starved. Some say they turned to things unspoken. You don't ask what that means. You don't want the answer. You start to hoard. Just a little. A crust tucked into your shirt. A few beans in a pouch. You tell yourself it's not stealing. It's insurance. You pray no one finds out. Or worse, that everyone already knows and is just pretending not to see. Cooking becomes sacred. The fire is tended like a shrine. The pot is stirred like a ritual. No one speaks while eating. You chew. You swallow. You try to feel full. You fail. But it's the trying that keeps you alive. And then, one evening, something small happens. A handful of wild greens. A rabbit. A slice of real bread, miraculously baked. You share it. It's gone in seconds. But for a moment, the silence is replaced with breathing. Hope doesn't return, but it glances at you from a distance. Later, you learn that some settlements didn't survive not because of disease, but because of miscalculated harvests. They planted the wrong crops, stored food poorly, ate seeds meant for the next season. Mistakes compound. A single bad harvest becomes a slow-motion catastrophe. Hunger breeds desperation. Desperation breaks order. And when that happens, it's not just your stomach that's empty. It's the law, the fellowship, the trust. You once believed food was simple. Eat when you're hungry. Now, it is everything. It is politics. It is trust. It is survival. You do not live from meal to meal. You live from bite to bite. This is not hardship. It is the new normal. And the worst part is, you get used to it. You thought the voyage was hard. You thought the land was cruel. You thought the hunger gnawed enough. But now comes the truth. All those trials were just the warm-up act. Because winter doesn't care how brave you are. It doesn't care how pious your intentions or how much wood you chopped in October. Winter is not your enemy. It's your judge. And it finds everyone wanting. It doesn't arrive all at once. First come the nights. A little colder. A little longer. You notice your breath when you speak. Your boots crunch in the morning. Frost appears on the rim of your water bucket. Then one morning, you wake and the ground is white, the wind is sharp, and every joint in your body aches before you even move. Winter has arrived, and it does not knock. Your cabin, if you can call it that, is no match. It's a box of planks nailed together in a hurry. There's a roof, more or less. There are walls, kind of. But there's no insulation. No glass windows. No chimney. Just a hearth made from stacked stones and gaps between the boards wide enough for a squirrel to poke its head through and ask how you're coping. The cold creeps in and never leaves. You sit close to the fire, but it only warms one side of you. The other side remains frozen. Your clothes are damp, your socks are stiff, and your blankets, if you're lucky enough to have any, smell like mildew and old smoke. Your fingers go numb when you sleep. Your toes stop hurting altogether. You pretend that's a good sign. It isn't. Wood becomes your obsession. You need it to survive. You burn through your stockpile in weeks, not months. You start rationing. You start stealing. You strip the furniture, the fences, the handles from broken tools. Anything that burns is fair game. You venture into the woods to chop more, but the snow is deep. Your muscles are weak, and every swing of the axe feels like an insult to your spine. There's never enough. The fire dies too quickly. You wake in the night with frost on your blanket and ice in the bucket. The wind whistles through the walls like it's looking for something to punish. You pile more rags on your bed. You sleep in your clothes. Still you shiver. Food spoils slower now. That's the only benefit. The rats stay hidden. The mould recedes. But you still don't have enough. You boil the same bones again and again, hoping flavour will return. You scrape grease from the pan and spread it on bread like it's butter. You suck on twigs, chew bark, and swear you remember the taste of carrots once. People get quiet. The cold silences everything. Laughter disappears. Songs go unsung. The preacher still mutters sermons, but even he wraps himself in 3 cloaks and ends quickly. Conversation becomes practical. More wood. That one's coughing. Stir the pot. No one wastes words. They're too heavy. And a sickness, of course, returns. Colds turn to fevers. Frostbitten toes turn black. A child dies in the night, and no one notices until morning. You dig a grave, but the ground is frozen. You chisel, you pick, you curse. Eventually, you settle for a shallow pit covered with stones. You say a prayer, if you have the breath. Sleep becomes an act of faith. You lie down not knowing if you'll wake up. You curl into yourself, a ragged cocoon of desperation. You dream of warmth, of sun, of anything not white or grey or bitter. You wake sore and tired. The world is still frozen. The fire has died again. Your skin cracks. Not metaphorically, literally. Your lips split, your hands bleed, and your nose drips a steady trail of misery. You rub grease or lard on your fingers, but it doesn't help much. Your joints feel older than you are. You're 24, but you walk like a grandfather and grunt like one too. And with the cold comes something worse. Time. Endless, frozen time. You can't plant. You can't build. You can't travel. You can barely move. You sit by the fire and stare at the walls, waiting for something to change. It doesn't. The days are short, the nights are endless, and the only thing moving is your breath in the air. The animals are smarter. They've disappeared. The birds flew south. The deer retreated into the deep woods. The bears are asleep. Only the crows remain, perching in the trees like little prophets, waiting for something to die. You watch them and wonder if they know your name. Water is both too much and not enough. Snow is everywhere, but it's frozen and useless until you melt it, and melting it costs precious fuel. You eat soup more often because it's hot and fills the belly, even when it's just turnip water with a single bean floating in it. You drink it slowly, savouring the illusion of nourishment. Cabin fever is real. People grow irritable, then silent. Arguments break out over nothing. Who touched the woodpile? Who took the last ladle of broth? Who's breathing too loud? You withdraw into yourself, clutching your blanket and pretending not to hear. A man leaves one morning, angry, coatless. No one sees him again. Someone finds his hat in the snow weeks later, frozen solid. The children stop playing. They sit quietly, bundled in layers, staring at the fire. You try to entertain them, tell stories, sing songs, but your voice is hoarse, and your hands tremble. A child asks if spring is real, or just something people made up. You don't answer. Frost forms on the inside of the walls. Your breath clouds in front of your face. The fire is barely holding. Someone has a cough that won't stop. They're moved to the far side of the hut. You try not to listen. Try not to think about what it means. You wrap your scarf tighter and keep the axe close. Not for wood. For what happens if someone starts thinking about desperate things? Some mornings you wake and your hair is frozen to the wall. You pull away slowly, wincing, and blink at the thin light coming through the cracks. It's another day. You made it. That's all you can say. You made it. This is winter in early America. It does not care how well you planned. It does not reward the diligent or punish the lazy. It comes like a judgment and stays like a curse. And if you survive, if you crawl out of the season with all your fingers and most of your soul intact, congratulations. You've passed the test until next year. Spring becomes a rumour, a myth people whisper about when they think the walls aren't listening. You remember warm rain, green shoots, the sound of bees, but it feels more like a dream than a memory. The snow keeps falling. Your shoulders stay hunched. You haven't felt sunlight in weeks. You mark the days with scratches on the beam. They start to blur. Was that Sunday or Monday? Does it matter? The calendar is a luxury now. Time is measured by how low the woodpile is. How many spoons of flour remain? How many coughs before someone goes silent? And when the thaw finally comes, slow, wet, miserable, it's not a celebration. The snow melts into mud. The ground gives way beneath your boots. The roof starts leaking again, but the air smells different. There's movement in the trees. You hear birds. You weep. And it surprises you. Spring didn't save you. You saved yourself. Barely. Winter tried to erase you. You clung to the edge of life with frostbitten fingers and splintered tools and faith that cracked more than once. And now you get to do it all over again. You wonder how the people around you still go on. The woman who lost her child but still stokes the fire. The old man with one eye who hums quietly as he whittles kindling. There's no heroism here, just endurance. A slow, stubborn refusal to die. And in that there is something close to hope. Not bright or loud, but solid. Like the last coal in the hearth, glowing faintly, daring the cold to snuff it out. In early America, work is not something you do. It is something you survive. There are no weekends, no holidays unless they're religious, and still somehow exhausting. No coffee breaks, no casual Friday. There is only one rule: you work or you die. You wake before the sun, because sleeping past dawn is a luxury reserved for the dead. Your hands are already sore from yesterday. Your back aches. Your knees feel like they've been borrowed from a man twice your age and returned broken. You stretch only because staying curled hurts more. Someone nearby is already moving. You hear water sloshing in a bucket. Fire being coaxed from dying embers. A cough that sounds more ominous than it did last week. Breakfast, if it happens at all, is fast and functional. Maybe a chunk of stale bread, a bit of cold porridge, a sip of weak beer, because the water is likely carrying new and exciting diseases. Then it's out the door, into the mud, the cold, or the heat, depending on which seasonal punishment the weather gods have chosen for you. If you're a man, your job is outside. If you're not dying, you're chopping, digging, ploughing, hauling or hammering. The fields don't plough themselves, And the forests don't magically become houses. You spend your day fighting the earth, digging up rocks, tilling rocky soil, praying for rain, then cursing when it floods. You build fences that fall down in storms, chop trees that splinter the axe, carry logs that threaten to snap your spine, and always, always you sweat. Your tools are few and crude. An iron hoe, a wooden plough, maybe an axe with a handle that's seen better centuries. If you're lucky, you have a horse or an ox to help. If you're not, congratulations, your shoulders are the horse now. There's no mechanic, no toolbox, no spare parts. If something breaks, you fix it with string, spit, and creative swearing. Your clothing works against you. Wool in summer, linen in winter, boots that leak, gloves that don't exist. Your hands crack and bleed. Your nails split. Splinters become permanent features of your palm. You carry hay, mud, firewood, and sometimes other people. Your spine is less a column and more of a suggestion. If you're a woman, your workday is somehow worse. Everything the men do, plus everything else. You cook, clean, sew, haul, nurse, parent, and mend. You wake the earliest and sleep the latest. You spin wool until your fingers are raw, knead dough until your knuckles cease, and churn butter until your arms feel like lead. You chop firewood, carry water, and then somehow still serve the meal without collapsing. Childcare isn't a break, it's an added job. Babies are carried on hips while you stir pots. Toddlers cling to skirts while you dig up potatoes. You breastfeed one child while telling another to stop hitting the goat. No one thanks you. There's no applause, just more work. Children don't get a pass. As soon as they can walk without falling over, they're put to work. Feeding chickens, gathering kindling, carrying water, picking stones from the fields. No toys, no schooling, unless someone taught you to read between chores. A child is not a child. They're just a shorter worker with fewer rights. If one manages to sit still for too long, someone will hand them a task just to maintain the natural order of misery. Illness doesn't excuse you. If you're not coughing up blood, you're expected to help. A sprained ankle means you crawl instead of walk. A fever means you take more breaks, not that you stop. If you die, well, that's one less mouth to feed, and one less pair of hands to disappoint the fields. Work does not pause for grief. It barely nods at it. Sundays are theoretically a day of rest, but they're not restful. You go to church, which might mean walking miles in bad shoes, sitting on a backless bench, while a man in robes shouts about sin, and then walking home again, thinking about how you still have to cook supper and mend your shirt. If it's winter, the church is freezing. If it's summer, it's a sweatbox full of flies and the unwashed. Some work is specialised. If you're a blacksmith, your world is heat, hammer, and smoke. You burn yourself regularly, inhale metal dust, and go half deaf from the clang of iron on iron. If you're a cooper, you make barrels for food storage, water, ale, and if you mess it up, something spoils and people starve. A tanner works with hides, urine, and lime. Their hands are perpetually raw. Their clothing stinks. Their lungs slowly give out. Even the easier jobs aren't easy. Tailoring. You sit hunched over a candle, stitching through rough cloth with a dull needle until your eyes cross. Cooking. You stand over an open hearth, breathing smoke, getting blisters, burning your palms. Midwifery? You help bring life into the world with no tools, no sterilisation, and every chance of watching mother or child, or both, slip away. Work is constant. There's always something broken, always something leaking, always something rotting, missing, or catching fire. You patch roofs in the rain. You dig ditches in the dark. You fix carts with rope and prayer. You shear sheep and chase pigs and clean tools that never stay clean. You sweep the floor, even though dirt is a permanent resident. At night, your muscles scream. You lie on straw and feel every stone beneath you. Your legs twitch. Your hands cramp. You fall asleep mid-sentence. You wake still tired. And then you do it again. The seasons change the job, but never the burden. In spring, you plant. In summer, you weed and haul and swat at clouds of insects that treat your skin like a feast. In autumn, you harvest, haul, and preserve what little you manage to coax from the earth. In winter, you split wood, fight frost, and spend hours just keeping the fire alive. You work harder to not freeze than you ever did to not starve. You dream of rest, but even your dreams are filled with chores. Fetch water, shuck corn, chase chickens. You have nightmares about losing tools, because replacing one could mean trading away your only boots. And everything you do with the knowledge that it might not be enough. One late frost, one early flood, one outbreak of fever, and your entire season's work turns to ash. You're always one bad week away from ruin. There are no sick days, no second chances, no promotions, just survival, broken fingernails, and the deep, quiet knowledge that no matter how hard you work today, tomorrow won't care. Work doesn't make you stronger. It wears you down. It blunts your mind. It hollows your body. You stop looking people in the eye because you're too tired. You forget how to laugh unless the joke is about finally dying. But still, you get up every day because no one else will do it for you. This is your job in early America. Not a career, not a calling, just the daily act of not giving up. And whether you're ploughing soil, scrubbing floors, nursing children, or gutting fish, you do it until the day your hands finally stop moving. And even then, someone will expect you to be buried quickly so they can get back to work. Sometimes someone breaks. They sit down in the middle of a task and just stop. No crying, no speech, just stillness. Their eyes go glassy, their hands go limp, and after a few minutes, someone else quietly takes over their work. No one talks about it, because everyone knows it could be them next. One bad night, one pulled muscle, one missing meal. That's all it takes. So you work, you endure. Because in early America, your worth is measured by your labour. And when the day comes that you can no longer contribute, when your back gives out or your legs won't carry you, there is no retirement. There is only absence, and a new name added to the list of the gone. The sky darkens, and the tools are finally laid down, not because the work is finished, but because the light is gone. You trudge home, muscles screaming, knowing tomorrow will be the same. And the cruelest part, some tiny piece of you is grateful. Grateful that there will be a tomorrow. You don't catch sickness in early America. It catches you. Slowly at first, through a cough that won't go away, a cut that refuses to heal, or a strange aching behind the eyes. Then all at once, it has you. And when it does, there's no doctor coming. No clean sheets. No medicine cabinet. Only prayer, boiling water, and blind hope. Every breath is a risk. Every drop of water. Every scrape of food. Every hand you shake. If you're lucky enough to live among people clean enough to shake hands, could be carrying your next great undoing. Germ theory isn't a thing yet. Disease is blamed on bad air, divine punishment. Or perhaps that neighbour you always suspected was a bit too cheerful. The local remedies are a mixed bag. One person recommends garlic, another mustard plasters. Someone else swears by powdered toad. Whatever the cure, it's administered with shaking hands and absolute confidence, which is comforting until you realise no one actually knows what they're doing. You're already starting from behind. Your diet is trash. You're malnourished, underslept, and chronically exhausted. Your immune system is working overtime just to keep your body from eating itself. So when illness comes, and it always comes, it hits like a hammer. Coughs last for weeks. Fevers burn hot and wild. Cuts go septic. Teeth rot and fall out. A splinter in the wrong place can lead to an amputation. You can die from stepping on a nail. You can die from childbirth, a stomachache, a bad glass of milk. You can die from eating the wrong berry or not eating at all. Life is a parade of minor symptoms with lethal potential. And let's not forget dysentery, nature's way of reminding you who's really in charge. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic. It's just slow, messy dehydration until your insides give up and everything shuts down. There's no dignity in it, just a bed of straw and someone whispering the Lord's Prayer while trying not to gag. There are no hospitals. The sick are treated in the same room where people eat, sleep and argue. There's no privacy, no sanitation, and no mercy. You lie in your corner of the hut, sweating, shaking, hallucinating, and hoping you don't disturb the others too much. Because if you do, they might decide to move you outside, and you won't come back in. The treatments, such as they are, come from a mixture of folklore, desperation, and half-remembered advice. Bleeding is popular. You're too hot, too cold, acting strangely. Out comes the blade or the leech. Bloodletting is considered a universal reset button, even if the patient's last words are, "I feel dizzy." It's not uncommon to pass out mid-treatment. Some don't wake back up. Herbs are the next line of defence. Chamomile, sage, horehound, yarrow. Names whispered like spells. They're steeped, crushed, poulticed, and rubbed onto wounds with great ceremony. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they do nothing. Sometimes they make things worse. But the smell at least convinces you that something is being done. Toothaches are their own brand of misery. You feel it first as a dull throb, then sharp pain, then swelling. Then the whole side of your face balloons and you can barely speak. There are no dentists, only a brave fool with a pair of tongs and a bottle of rum. You're told to bite down on leather and hold still. The crack is audible. The pain is indescribable. Infection is almost guaranteed. Midwives double as doctors, herbalists, and therapists. They deliver babies in firelit huts and with nothing but rags, boiled water, and prayer. They handle fevers, wounds, miscarriages, and mystery illnesses with quiet authority. And yet, they're constantly at risk of being accused of witchcraft, because knowing too much is dangerous, especially if you're a woman. And then there's smallpox. It doesn't knock. It kicks in the door. Red spots appear, first as a nuisance, then as a verdict. You're isolated. Not for your safety, for theirs. The sores swell, burst and crust over. You itch until you bleed. You're disfigured for life if you survive. Many don't. You hear stories from nearby towns. Entire families wiped out. Children gone in a week. A man who dug 6 graves in 2 days. A preacher who held a funeral for his own wife from the doorstep, too afraid to enter the room. The disease moves faster than gossip. By the time you hear about it, it's already here. Injury is common. Axes slip, horses kick, fires burn. You fall, you bleed, and then you hope. A broken leg means weeks of pain and immobility, and if you're lucky, someone helps carry you. If not, you crawl. There's no cast, no splint beyond sticks and rags. The bone might heal, or it might heal wrong. Now you limp for the rest of your life. Assuming the infection doesn't win first, mental illness is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. Sadness is sin. Melancholy is weak faith. Anxiety is cowardice. If you speak of hearing voices or act strangely, you're whispered about. If you're a woman, the word hysteria starts making the rounds. If you're loud about your suffering, you might find yourself locked in a cellar, or worse, blamed for bringing the sickness to begin with. Water doesn't help. Not in the way it should. Clean water is a fantasy. What you drink is usually river runoff, shared with animals, filled with silt, leaves and invisible threats. Boiling helps, but fuel is precious. You bathe rarely, if at all, because cold water chills the bones, and warm water is considered medically risky. Bathing opens the pores, they say. That's how the illness gets in. So you don't bathe, you don't rest, you barely eat. And then one day, your body fails. You faint, you fall. You vomit blood or cough up something dark and clotted. People around you avoid eye contact. They start whispering your name in the past tense. If you're important, maybe a preacher comes. If not, someone mutters a prayer from across the room. A cloth is placed on your forehead. You're told to drink broth. You can't keep it down. Your stomach turns against you. Your bowels follow. Your breath rattles. Sometimes you recover. Sometimes it passes. But the world keeps turning either way. If you die, there's a hole waiting. If you live, there's a job waiting. There's no long recovery. No soft re-entry into daily life. The day you can stand is the day you're handed a bucket and told to fetch water. You learn to spot the signs early. A shiver too long. A cough that echoes. Eyes that don't focus. You learn who might last and who probably won't. You stop asking if someone feels better. You stop offering advice. You just tighten the blankets and keep the fire going. It's the most you can do. Sometimes someone survives something they shouldn't. A fever that broke. A wound that closed. People call it a miracle. They thank God. The survivor says nothing, because deep down, they know it wasn't divine mercy. It was chance. Dumb, brutal luck. And there's always another illness waiting. New settlers bring new plagues. The weather changes and something strange spreads again. You cough. You pray. You drink something foul and bitter that a neighbour swears saved their cousin. You don't believe it, but it burns going down. So at least it feels like something is happening. Eventually, your body is not your own. It belongs to the rhythms of the colony, the limits of early medicine, and the whims of fate. You walk slower. You breathe harder. You sleep more but rest less. And one day, when the fever comes for you again, you know it might be the last. There's no insurance, no nurses, no quiet white rooms with beeping machines and floral wallpaper. There's just a straw mattress, a wooden bowl of tepid water, and someone you love sitting nearby, too tired to cry. Illness in early America doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for a convenient time. It doesn't spare the strong or the faithful. It simply arrives, stays as long as it wants, and leaves a trail of silence behind it. And when it's gone, if you're still alive, you go back to work. Because in early America, health is a temporary condition, but labour is eternal. In early America, freedom is a myth carved into future monuments, not something you'll find in your daily life. Authority is not questioned, it is endured. You don't speak up, you don't speak out, you barely speak unless spoken to. And even then, you choose your words like they might be your last, because they might be. Power wears many faces: the preacher, the governor, the magistrate, the landowner, the militia captain, the man with the Bible in one hand and a musket in the other. Sometimes they're the same person. Sometimes they disagree with each other, but all of them outrank you, and you are expected to obey. Not out of respect, but because the cost of resistance is immediate and often public. Laws exist, but not the kind you argue with. Not the kind printed neatly and explained with care. They're passed down through warning and punishment. You learn the rules when you see someone whipped for breaking them, when someone disappears after speaking too freely, when a man is nailed by the ear to a post because he stole a loaf of bread. Justice here isn't blind. It's looking right at you, with a raised eyebrow and a hand on its belt. Petty crimes are met with brutal solutions. Theft can cost you your fingers. Lying in court might earn you a split tongue or a branding. Speaking ill of a magistrate can have you standing in the stocks for days, covered in spit and whatever else the townsfolk can throw. If you're lucky, your punishment ends with humiliation. If not, it ends with a noose. Executions are not hidden. They are scheduled events, community gatherings where children are advised to watch so they'll learn something. A gallows is as common as a water well. A hanging draws a crowd. A burning draws a bigger one. And all of this, all the lashes and gags and pillories, are considered necessary. Good, even. They keep order. They teach discipline. They make examples. You're not asked to understand. You're asked to comply. Religion is law's older brother. Older, stricter, and far more imaginative when it comes to punishments. The preacher watches you closely. He listens for blasphemy in your tone, insubordination in your silence. Church attendance is not optional. Missing Sunday service is like slapping God across the face. Fines, public confession, or worse can follow. You stand in the church, shoulder to shoulder with others who smell like smoke and fear. You nod when expected. You repeat what's told to you. You don't dare look bored. The sermons are long, thunderous warnings of fire and damnation. Hell is vivid, detailed. A place more real than your own bedroom, if you had one. And you can be punished for what you think. Not just what you do. If you say the wrong thing about Scripture, about God, about the preacher himself, you risk the label of heretic. Or worse, witch. Either label can end with you floating face down in the river. Women and outsiders are especially vulnerable. If you're a woman who speaks too boldly, you're hysterical. If you heal with herbs, you're suspicious. If you have knowledge, you're dangerous. Outsiders, the poor, the foreign, the strange, are useful only when silent. Any challenge to the social hierarchy is met with cold efficiency. You're taught not to resist. You're taught to survive. Children are raised in this same shadow. They are disciplined early and often. A child who disobeys is thrashed, not just by the parents, but by any adult nearby. Schools are few and rarely kind. Education, where available, is a strict affair filled with rote memorization, canings, and the constant threat of being made an example. There is no privacy. There is no dissent. Even your thoughts feel borrowed from the sermon you heard last week. You move like a ghost through your own life, careful not to upset anyone. Authority is not a person. It's the air itself, watching, listening, waiting. The rules change depending on who you are. If you're a servant or indentured, your rights are theoretical. You follow orders or you're beaten. If you complain, you're punished. If you try to escape, you're hunted. If you're caught, you're maimed. There's always someone above you, someone with the power to ruin you with a gesture. Even freemen must tread carefully. Speak too loudly in the tavern about the governor's tax? Expect a visit. Argue with your landlord? You might find your goods accidentally confiscated during a search. There's no due process. There's barely process. Most accusations don't end in trial. They end in example. And if you're enslaved, there is no protection at all. You're not a person. You are property. You can be beaten, sold, starved, or killed without consequence. The law exists to protect your owner's investment in you, not your body, not your life, and certainly not your freedom. Gossip is a weapon. The whispers of your neighbours can destroy you faster than any court. She looked too long at the preacher. He doesn't bow when he passes the governor. There are, of course, no appeals, no higher court to hear your plea. If you're punished unjustly, the only recourse is prayer. And even then, you're expected to apologise first. Forgiveness exists for the powerful. For everyone else, there's repentance or ruin. And yet, even in this grim order, people cling to their places. Not because they love obedience, but because fear is easier than chaos. The idea of no law, no rules, is more terrifying than a cruel one. At least here, you know what the punishment is. You've seen it, you've smelled it, you've heard it in the cries of those who didn't step carefully enough. Sometimes the punishments are symbolic. A person is forced to wear a sign, thief, drunkard, liar, made to stand in the town square, eyes down, shame on display. Sometimes they are literal, ears cropped, noses slit, brands pressed to skin like livestock. The scars never go away. They mark you forever. And not just your skin, your reputation, your prospects, your children's futures. You learn the dance. You bow deeper. You speak softer. You nod more often than you mean it. You make yourself small in the presence of power, not just for safety, but for survival. You don't complain when the taxes rise. You don't question when the rules change. You don't point out that the preacher's son never gets punished, because you know how quickly a grumble turns into a trial. There is no revolution in your bones, no fire in your chest. There is a quiet acceptance, the same kind animals have when they recognize the shape of the cage. You might dream of something better, but not out loud. You might speak of fairness, but only behind closed doors, and only in a whisper. Your children learn the same lessons. They watch you endure. They see you obey. They understand, even before they can walk, that survival requires silence, that power flows one way, and standing in its path only gets you swept aside. It is not heroism that gets passed down. It is caution, care, calculation. And so life continues. You rise, work, nod, kneel, and sleep, all under the watchful eye of authority. It doesn't matter if the rules make sense. It doesn't matter if you agree. What matters is that you follow them. Because in early America, the law isn't just written on paper, it's carved into people. The silence isn't peace, it's pressure. A tight-lipped calm stretched thin over fear. And everyone you meet, no matter how polite, is balancing on that same edge, nodding along, praying quietly, and doing their best not to be next. And if you wonder why no one revolts, why no one resists, the answer is simple. Because everyone knows someone who did, and they remember what happened to them in detail. In public, in pain, that's all it takes. In early America, being a woman isn't just difficult, it's doubly so. You don't simply live through hardship. You do it while carrying everyone else's burden on your back, wrapped in homespun linen, holding a child in one arm and a cooking pot in the other. Whatever the men do, women are expected to match, and then keep going. You rise before the men, not out of choice, but because someone has to start the fire, fetch the water, and stir whatever's left in the cooking pot from the night before. You might have slept 2 or 3 hours, maybe more, if the baby didn't scream through the night, or if your husband didn't come home drunk and short-tempered. You pray silently, or maybe just sigh, a quieter form of survival, and start your day. Breakfast is not served, it is assembled. You boil cornmeal, scrape ash from the hearth, and knead yesterday's dough. The fire spits sparks onto your hands. You wince, wipe sweat from your forehead with a soot-smeared sleeve, and keep going. By the time the others are stumbling awake, you've already been working for an hour. Child rearing is not its own job. It's background noise to all the others. You carry a baby on your hip while stirring pottage, sewing a shirt, or chopping vegetables. You learn to balance an infant with one arm and hoist a water bucket with the other. When the child cries, you hush it without breaking stride. There's no nursery, no playpen, no time-out corner. Only the edge of a dirt floor where you lay the child and pray it doesn't roll into the fire. Cleaning is constant and futile. There is no soap. Water must be hauled in buckets. The floor is made of packed earth that turns to mud when wet, dust when dry, and filth in between. You sweep it daily with a bundle of straw tied to a stick, knowing full well it will never be clean. Not really, not for long. Laundry is not a weekly chore, it's a siege. Clothes are scrubbed on washboards, if you have one, or against a flat stone by the river. You kneel in the cold, raw water, scraping fabric with lye or ash soap that burns your skin and chaps your knuckles. Then you wring it dry, with hands already swollen, and hang it in the wind, praying the rain doesn't return. There are no dryers. If it rains again, you start over. Sewing and mending are endless. Your family owns maybe 1 or 2 sets of clothes each. You patch holes with scrap, re-stitch every seam until the fabric looks more thread than cloth. You save buttons like gold, straighten old needles over fire, and squint by candlelight after everyone else is asleep. If someone tears their only shirt, it becomes your emergency. Then comes cooking. Forget recipe books. There's no oven, no timer, no measurements. You cook with instinct and heat and guesswork. A pot over the hearth, bubbling with a mix of root vegetables and regrets. You taste with your fingers. Add salt when it's available. Stir constantly, because if it burns, no one eats. If someone gets sick, you're blamed. If someone complains, you take it quietly. Because silence is expected. Gratitude is not. You also tend the garden, assuming you're lucky enough to have one. You weed it, water it, protect it from insects, birds and hungry neighbours. It's your insurance policy. If it fails, your family starves. If it succeeds, the men praise God, and you go back to weeding. On top of all this, you're expected to manage the emotional temperature of the home. If your husband is cruel, you endure it. If he's sad, you console him. If your children misbehave, it's your fault. If anything breaks, a dish, a chair, your spirit, you clean it up and carry on. Marriage is not an escape. It is a transaction. You are a dowry, a womb, a worker. Love, if it happens, is a fortunate accident. Your wedding may be small and quiet, with no ring and no gown, just a handshake and a prayer and a new life of labour under a different roof. Pregnancy is not a sacred glow. It's a gamble. Each time your belly swells, you wonder if you'll live through it. There are no doctors, no prenatal vitamins, no clean sheets, just a midwife, if you're lucky, and a set of hands you pray are steady. Labour can last hours, days. You scream into cloth, claw at the floor, bleed into straw. If the child lives, you thank God. If you live, you call it mercy. If neither happens, the others clean up quietly and move on. And when the child is born, the work doubles. Diapers don't exist. You tear rags and wash them over and over. You nurse constantly. You rock the baby while kneading bread, while boiling herbs and while scraping soot from the hearth. And if the baby dies from fever, from hunger, from cold, you are expected to mourn silently and keep working. You're not allowed to be weak. If you cry too much, you're unstable. If you shout, you're hysterical. If you resist, you're dangerous. If you know too much, you're a witch. You learn to speak softly, bow your head, and swallow your fury. Your life is survival in a corset of silence. And yes, you wear a corset. Not the ones in costume dramas. Yours is a stiff, scratchy thing, meant to straighten your back and suppress your body. You lace it up while nursing a toddler. You work in it. You sleep in it. You learn to move with it until the discomfort becomes part of your posture. There are no mirrors. Your reflection is in a bucket of water, if it's still enough. You forget your face. You forget your shape. You forget how to describe yourself beyond what you do. Wife, mother, servant, midwife. No adjectives, only titles. Courtship is brief. Flirting is a risk. If you smile too much, you're asking for attention. If you refuse a man's interest, you're rude. If something happens to you, something unspeakable, you are blamed for it. Your virtue is everyone's concern until it's gone. Then it's your problem alone. Even in church, your place is at the edge. You sit behind the men. You speak only to sing, and even then, not too loudly. You memorize scripture, but aren't asked what it means. The preacher talks about obedience, and everyone knows he's talking to you. Some women break the mould. Healers, spinsters, widows with sharp tongues. But most don't last long. Suspicion clings to them. If a child falls ill, it was the midwife's fault. If crops fail, it's the widow's stare. If a cow stops giving milk, someone remembers the herbalist said something odd last Tuesday. That's how it starts. Then come the whispers. Then comes the trial. Sometimes they drown you. Sometimes they burn you. Sometimes they just banish you to the edge of a village where the cold and the wolves wait patiently. You age fast. The sun creases your skin before you're 30. Your hands are calloused. Your hair greys early. You have stretch marks, scars, burns, missing teeth. All earned, none complained about. You're expected to smile anyway. to laugh softly, to keep the peace, to keep everyone else whole while you quietly fall apart. And even when you've done everything right, stayed silent, worked hard, obeyed, there's no guarantee. Your husband might die, your children might starve, your home might burn, and you'll be left alone, a widow in a world that fears independent women more than famine. So you work twice, you suffer twice, and you are remembered, if at all, only by the apron you left behind, still stained, still warm. Because in early America, a woman's work is never done, and neither is her silence. And yet somehow, despite all of it, women endure. They carry generations forward with aching arms and silent strength, weaving resilience into every stitch, every scar, every spoonful of soup. No one thanks them. No one notices. But they keep going. From the moment your boot touches this continent's soil, you carry with you not just disease and iron and scripture, but assumptions, heavy, invisible ones. You assume this place is empty. You assume it's yours. You assume that the people already here will either help you, fear you, or get out of the way. None of those assumptions are correct. The land is not empty. It has paths, stories, names. Older than your family, older than your king, older than the ink on your colonial charter. The people are not few. There are nations here, not scattered tribes. Cultures with governments, customs, languages, boundaries. Some live in longhouses, some in birch bark wigwams, others in lodges, earthworks, plank houses. All of them more adapted to this land than you are. But you don't understand that. You don't even try. Because in your world, maps are drawn with blank spaces, and ownership comes with paper and a wax seal. So when you see people on your land, you see trespassers. When they watch you from the tree line, you feel threatened, not because of what they do, but because you cannot imagine a world in which you are not in charge. The first encounters are often tense, cautious. You trade small things, a knife, a copper kettle, beads. They offer you food, pelts, tobacco. They gesture for peace, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with resignation. They've seen your kind before. You, however, have never seen anyone like them, and that unnerves you. Their faces are unreadable to you. Their expressions don't match your expectations. Their language is unfamiliar. Their silence feels ominous. Their smiles feel suspicious. You can't read them, so you decide they must be hiding something. You don't know what, but it must be dangerous. You try to communicate, you point. You speak louder, as if volume translates meaning. You mimic. You gesture. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they understand perfectly and pretend they don't, because they're not sure yet whether you're a threat, a fool, or both. You assume their help is automatic, their land a gift. If they show you how to grow maize or where the fish are, you call it a divine blessing, not survival knowledge painstakingly passed down over centuries. If they teach you something, you write it in your journal as your own discovery. If they warn you not to settle near a certain stream, and you do anyway, you call the resulting flood an act of God. Their customs confuse you. They don't rush meals. They don't shake hands. Their leaders don't dress in lace or carry swords. When they speak, it takes longer, not because they're slow, but because words matter. Silence is part of the language, and when they decide, they do so together, a concept as foreign to you as the plants in their medicine pouches. And still, you label them savages, not because they are, but because they don't mirror you. They don't kneel the same way. They don't pray in Latin. They don't build fences or tally land deeds. So you decide they must be lesser. This comforts you. It gives you permission. You fear what you don't control. So you start to arm yourself more visibly. You build higher walls. You look for excuses. A rumour of a stolen cow becomes a justification for a raid. A glance in the wrong direction is all it takes to escalate a meeting into a conflict. You don't understand their politics, so you assume they have none. You don't recognise their diplomacy, so you call it trickery. They see what's coming. Most of them always did. Sometimes they leave offerings, corn, fish, a woven mat, as signs of peace. You assume they're tribute. You assume you're winning. But it's not submission. It's strategy. They are trying to avoid war. They know what war with you will mean. They've seen the weapons. They've buried the dead. And yet, not all encounters turn violent. Sometimes alliances form. Temporary, uneasy ones. You need them to survive the winter. They need you to trade for iron tools. You smoke pipes together. Share meals. Exchange gifts. There is laughter. You begin to feel at ease. And that's when you make the mistake. You assume friendship is ownership. That their tolerance is consent. That a patch of shared hunting ground is now your field. You build fences. You dig wells. You claim. You plant your flag. And when they resist, when they ask questions, when they draw lines, when they remind you of the agreements, you feel betrayed. You call them hostile, unreasonable, ungrateful. You forget that you were the guest. And so the pattern begins. You call for backup. More settlers arrive. More land is cleared. The forest shrinks. The rivers grow cloudy. The animals flee. The balance breaks. They warn you again. They hold councils. They send runners with messages, painted sticks, bundles of arrows left at your doorstep. Each a language you refuse to learn. Each a signal you ignore. And then, one morning, it happens. A skirmish. A death. Maybe accidental, maybe not. Someone's hut burns. Someone's brother is found dead near a stream. And now it's war. You don't know the terrain. They do. You march in formation. They move through trees. Your bright coats make you targets. Their silence makes them ghosts. You outnumber them, but numbers aren't everything when your enemy knows every shadow. Sometimes you win. Your weapons are louder. Your reinforcements steadier. You burn their villages. Take prisoners. Push borders. And you call it victory. Sometimes you lose. You vanish into the forest and are never found. A poisoned arrow ends you in the dark. A trap snaps your leg and you bleed into the soil. No one writes your name down. Your disappearance becomes a rumour. But even when peace returns, it is brittle. A temporary pause between misunderstandings. You call it a treaty. They call it a warning. You sign your name and they sign with symbols, not because they cannot write, but because their meaning is not your language. You walk away satisfied. They walk away wary. Years pass. More ships arrive. More fences are built. Forest paths become roads. Wigwams give way to taverns, and still they adapt. They survive. Some convert, some trade, some marry, some vanish into hills or are herded onto distant lands you've never seen, but they never disappear entirely, no matter what your map says, no matter how many statues you build, or schools you fund, or stories you write. And you, the settler, the guest, the stranger, live on the land now, but not alone. Every step you take is on memory. Every harvest, every brick, every town square is layered over lives you never understood. Because in early America, the greatest mistake wasn't violence. It was arrogance. You assumed they were simple. You assumed they were gone. You were wrong. And still today, in quiet clearings and beside old rivers, the echoes remain. Not in your language, not in your monuments, but in the shape of the land, the forgotten trails, the herbs that grow where old hands once planted them. You don't see it, you don't ask, but it's there, waiting, watching, remembering. You recall one night, cold, silent and fogged in moonlight, when a figure stepped from the trees. Not armed, not angry, just watching. You froze, hand on your musket. They said nothing, just looked. You tried to speak, but no words came. And then they were gone. The next morning your traps were sprung but empty. Your firewood was gone, and someone had left a woven token, a small deer made of grass, beside your door. You burned it without thinking. But you never slept soundly again, because deep down you knew. They had given you a message, and you had missed it. Because in early America, the most dangerous thing you could bring to a meeting was not a musket, but ignorance. Later, when you tell the story, you'll edit out the silence, the confusion, the fear you felt when you realized they understood you better than you understood them. You'll call it a misunderstanding, a necessary war. But somewhere in the back of your mind, the forest never stops watching. You wake up tired again. There is no such thing as a full night's sleep in early America. The straw pokes through your blanket. The baby cried half the night. The wind found a new gap in the wallboards and needled your spine like a curse. When you finally stir, your legs feel twice their weight. Your back has stiffened like rawhide. You sit up slowly and remember, you're only 30, and yet you feel 80. This is the end of your day, though the sun's just rising. Because here, a long life is short, and the days drag like broken oxen through mud. Time doesn't slip by, it claws at you. One sunrise at a time, it erodes you down to nothing. You start with the fire, always the fire. You rake the coals, blow softly, feed it kindling and scraps. If the fire has died entirely, you trudge to a neighbour's hearth, hat in hand, hoping for an ember. Without it, there's no breakfast, no heat, no comfort, just cold, stiff hands and teeth that ache in your skull. You eat if there's food. More cornmeal. Maybe a piece of dried apple, if it wasn't nibbled by mice. You chew slowly, not for pleasure, but because chewing any faster risks cracking a tooth. Your gums bleed anyway. You swallow pain with every bite. Then it's time to work, again, still, forever. Chores don't wait, they breed in the night. The woodpile is shrinking. The animals need tending. The roof leaks again. Someone has the fever. Someone else is limping. Someone else simply didn't wake up this morning. You mark their absence and move on. Because in early America, grief is a luxury you don't always have time to feel. Death is not rare, it's routine. A neighbour dies, and you nod. A child dies, and you sigh. A spouse dies, and you keep the stew warm. Mourning must be scheduled between chores. No time to weep if there's laundry. No time to sit if the cow's gone missing. You bury them quickly. Dig a shallow grave, if the ground isn't frozen. Say a short prayer. Cover them with dirt and move the rocks back into place. Sometimes there's a wooden marker. Sometimes not. The worms don't care either way. The earth takes everything. It always has. You do not expect to grow old, and the children you raise, if they live, will remember you as the parent who squinted into the sun and never smiled. You have no teeth for smiling, no breath for song. What little energy you have is spent keeping the walls up and the water from flooding the floor. If you're lucky, you don't die in winter. If you're unlucky, you die in winter, and no one can bury you until the ground thaws. Your body is stored in a shed, wrapped in cloth, visited by mice. When spring comes, someone will dig the hole and drop you in. Marriage brings no guarantee of longevity. A man might be killed in a logging accident. A woman might bleed out after childbirth. A child might waste away from a cough. Death doesn't discriminate. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives mid-meal, mid-sentence, mid-prayer. And when it does, you keep going. You don't have a choice. Because every day in early America is a rehearsal for the end. There are no doctors, not really, just neighbours with opinions. A fever is met with whiskey and prayer. A broken limb gets splintered with whatever's nearby. You might try herbal remedies, ground roots, poultices, teas that taste like compost. Sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. If you get sick, you're mostly on your own. People keep their distance, not out of cruelty but survival. One cough can clear a room. One fever can take down a household. You stay in bed, sweating, praying, watching the ceiling blur and warp with each hallucination. If you recover, you call it a miracle. If not, you don't get to call it anything. And yet, the days stretch on. Long, relentless. The sun arcs slowly overhead, marking the hours not with clocks, but with fatigue. You haul water, chop wood, scrub walls, mend tools, tend animals, weed gardens. If you stop, you fall behind. If you fall behind, you fail. And if you fail, you die. Or someone else does. There's no vacation, no retirement. You work until you break. And then you keep working, just slower. Your joints ache. Your hands curl into claws. Your eyesight fades. Your skin thickens like old leather. You become a figure at the edge of the room. Useful until you're not. In your spare time, you prepare for more work. You soak beans, patch roofs, stitch clothes, teach the youngest how to hold a shovel, how to sweep ash, how to carry water without spilling. There's no childhood here, just an apprenticeship to struggle. Sundays offer a kind of rest. If you count sitting stiffly on a wooden bench for 3 hours while a preacher tells you that everything hard about your life is your fault, that you were born sinful, that pain is holy, that suffering is good for the soul. You nod along because disagreeing is dangerous. Even joy is measured carefully. A wedding feast, if you can afford one. A song sung softly after supper. A baby's first steps, quickly followed by the realization that now they can wander into danger. You don't celebrate long. The world doesn't allow it. You measure time by seasons, by births, by burials. A good year is one where no one starves and only a few get sick. You mark the months not with calendars, but with tasks. Planting, harvesting, mending, surviving. Evenings come slowly. You sit by the fire, bones creaking, watching the shadows shift across the walls. There's no electricity, no distraction, just the weight of the day and the sound of your own breathing. Maybe a creak from the rafters. Maybe a cough from someone in the dark. You try not to wonder if that cough means anything. At night, the wind presses against the house like a test. You feel it in the gaps. The cold sneaks in, wraps around your legs. You pull your blanket tighter. You think about the day, about tomorrow, about how many tomorrows you might have left. And even in sleep, you're not free. You dream of fire, of flooding, of wolves, of losing everything, of starting over. You wake with your jaw clenched, your fists balled, your chest tight. You rise again, Stumble, begin, because this is what life is here. Not glory, not adventure, but attrition. A slow wearing down of flesh, spirit and bone. Every day is borrowed, every meal is earned, every mistake is punished. The land does not love you, the sky does not notice you. Time only moves forward, and it leaves nothing behind. So you keep going. Until one day, you don't. And when that day comes, someone else will wake up tired. Someone else will feed the fire. Someone else will dig a hole. And the world will keep spinning. Quietly. Indifferently. Because in early America, a short life is not a tragedy. It's the default setting. And if you live long enough to be called old, it's not a badge of honour. It's a curiosity. People nod at you like you've cheated something. But you haven't. You've just endured. Outlasted others. Buried more than your share. You don't tell stories. You don't give speeches. You keep to yourself. Watch the children work. And wait for the day when your name is spoken past tense. Because here, in the raw teeth of the world, life is a candle burned at both ends, blown out by weather or luck, or a splinter that festered too long. There is no eulogy, no plaque, just silence, and then someone else picking up your tools. So next time you think about history, about how you might have fared, remember this: you wouldn't have lasted a day, but someone like you did. And that's why you're here. Because in early America, survival wasn't heroic. It was just what people did until they couldn't. And even then the chores still needed doing.